Good evening and welcome everyone. This is our third and final Crawford Street Playground and Walnut Park community meeting. My name is Lauren Bryant and I'm the project manager for these projects for Boston Parks. Before we jump into our presentation, I just want to go over a few how-tos and what to expect.
Is that a slide switch?
Slide, yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, great.
So just want to make sure that everybody knows that tonight's meeting is being recorded and it'll be available on the project website within about a week. For those of you who may not know that we have our project website, it is boston.gov/Crawford-Walnut. And I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody. And we'll be updating that project throughout the, that website throughout the project. I also want to make sure to thank everybody that's able to make the meeting tonight. I know that we're all over Zoom at this point, so really appreciate people coming and know that there might be others in the neighborhood or friends or neighbors that weren't able to join us tonight. So please feel free to share what you learned tonight and also direct people to that project website for them to review the recorded meetings whenever their schedule allows. They're also, feel free to have them email me and I will put my email address in the chat in a few minutes. And they can also provide comments that way as well. Also want to note that during the presentation, we just ask if people will keep themselves muted in order for the sound to be easier for everyone to hear, but we'll be allowing people to unmute themselves during the discussion portions of the meeting tonight. Next slide, please.
It is stuck. Okay. Oh, there we go.
Okay, so we want to make sure that tonight's meeting is really productive and helpful for all who are attending, and each of you feels comfortable sharing your questions and comments. We ask that you be respectful and mindful of other people's time so that everybody has an opportunity to participate. So once you've had a chance to ask a question or make a comment, please wait till others have had the opportunity to ask questions before submitting another one. Next slide, please. So we want to hear your thoughts tonight, and that's why we're here. So there are several ways that you all can engage with us. We'll be sharing a short presentation with portions in the middle to be able to share your feedback, and we'll also have a larger discussion and question and answer session after the full presentation. But if a thought or a question pops up in the middle of the presentation, feel free to add it to the chat feed. If we don't get a chance to answer it during the presentation, we'll make sure to answer it during the discussion time. And if you're not familiar with the Zoom functions, the chat box is at the bottom of the screen and looks like a text bubble. So hopefully that takes care of all the housekeeping information. Next slide, please.
I am really sorry. It's just like sticking. Oh, there we go. Sorry.
That's okay. So now on to the project. Want to thank you guys again for your time tonight. Tonight we will introduce the design team, do a quick project overview. We'll do a presentation, and then we'll have time for discussions at the end. Next slide, please. And that's okay if it's taking a second.
Okay.
So for any of you guys who may have joined a little late, my name is Lauren Bryant, and I'm the project manager for Boston Parks for these two exciting park renovations, as well as about 8 to 10 others throughout the city. Christine Brandeo is here with us tonight. She is our outreach coordinator for external affairs. She's a great person to talk to about friends groups and other general park questions. I'm also going to introduce our design team from CBA Landscape Architects. Maybe you guys could each give a little wave when I say your name, and then introduce yourselves as you speak during the presentation. So tonight we have Megan Tompkins, Jessica Choi, and Jocelyn Wolf with us. And then Jay Shankant is your ONS rep. And I'm not sure that he's going to be able to join us tonight, but he's also a really great resource for the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Thank you. Tonight we'll be talking about both Crawford State Playground and Walnut Park. And I know it's not our usual to talk about two projects at once, but because they're so close to each other, we really want to make sure that we're thinking holistically about both parks as we go through this process. So what we're going to do is we'll talk first about what we heard at the first two meetings. Megan's going to give an overview of a lot of the comments that we heard and some of the things that were presented. Just a quick reminder for those who were there and a quick update for those who might not have been able to join us. Then we'll talk about each of the parks. And after each of the park discussions, we'll have a 5 to 10 minute discussion and then move on to the next one, just so that it's fresh in our minds as we're talking through it. And then we can talk about both of them larger discussion afterwards. Next slide, please. So like I said earlier, this is our third meeting for this project. The first meeting was in June and the second was in July. So tonight we have our third community meeting. We also this summer did a pop-up in the parks so that we could also talk to people in the park where they were out enjoying the space and being able to kind of talk through it while looking at it with everyone. At the first meeting, we talked about the analysis of the park, talking about what we see, what the community thinks about the park. At the second meeting, we showed several design concepts for each of the parks and took a lot of feedback on what the community thought about those. And again, Megan will go into some more details about specifics of what we heard. And then tonight, what we're going to be sharing is a consolidated design for each of those two parks based on everything that we've heard up to date, both at both of those community meetings and also the pop-up that we did at the park. And really, it's to say, did we get it right? Did we hear you guys? Did we really show you a concept with this last one? That's what the community is hoping to see. So what we'll do from there is take any feedback that we get tonight and finalize the design, turn those into construction documents, and we'll be bidding the project over this winter for a spring construction start for the project for both parks. And we're looking at currently constructing both parks at the same time. And the estimated construction cost for both of those parks combined is around $1.9 million. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Megan to start the presentation.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Tompkins. I'm a principal at CBA Landscape Architects. We design a lot of parks and playgrounds, and we've designed a lot of parks and playgrounds for Boston Parks and Rec in all sorts of neighborhoods: Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, East Boston, you name it, we've probably done it. So we love doing this kind of work. And I'm going to start by doing a very quick overview of sort of the neighborhood, just to, show a little site context. I'm sure if you live in this neighborhood or work in this neighborhood, you probably know this all already, but sometimes it's a little refreshing to see it in plan, or, to see things listed out. All right. And I will have to apologize because I don't know why my slides are moving so slowly today, but they're taking a very long time. Here we go. All right.
Megan, would you like me to try to share mine instead to see if that would work any better?
Let's see if I can get through a couple. Okay. It seemed like, yeah, let's just see. But if we have to switch, we can. All right. So this is actually a slide from one of our first meetings. We usually, our first meeting has a large site analysis portion. Basically, we'd like to show neighborhood context, and we'd like to show a radius around the park in sort of a 1/4 mile and 1/2 mile. And we usually consider that that's like a 5 to 10 minute walk, or a 10 to 15 minute walk. And this slide is really just showing what other parks, schools, other neighborhood organizations, and community organizations are nearby. So as you can see, it's Franklin Park, it's Horatio Harris, it's Malcolm X, and a whole bunch of little ones and little community gardens and things as well. All right, now it's moving. And obviously, if you're here at this meeting, you're familiar with this, with Crawford Street Playground and Walnut Park. They are pretty close together on Walnut Ave. Crawford Street Playground is a lot larger. And some of the immediately adjacent things closer to Crawford are the Ellis School and the NCAA museum building on the hill. So that's number 1 and number 2. And there are a few other things in the neighborhood as well. But adjacent streets are Walnut Ave, Crawford Street, Abbotsford, a couple of other things. All right. I have a theory that it's the blue slides that are moving slowly. Let's see. I'm wrong. So I'll start by along the lines of that site analysis, just show you how close these two parks really are together.
Megan, sorry to jump in really quickly. Do you have any dialog boxes open on your screen? Because there seems to be some black boxes covering some of the presentation. And sometimes that's the participant panel.
Yes. Let me see.
I wasn't sure if it was only, I thought it was only my computer at first.
How's that?
Mike, you can see him too? Okay. It's still covering part of the presentation. I think you may need to close.
Yeah, one on the bottom and then
There's one on the bottom too.
Okay. Now, is it now like over the top?
Yep.
Yes. Do you have your screen on full screen?
Yes.
Try pressing escape and taking it out of full screen.
Okay.
No, that didn't work. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that just like.
Do you want me to try to share mine and see if it's
Yeah, let's do
doing
it.
something different? Okay. So we're on Walnut existing. Okay. Let's see if that. Can you all see my screen? Does it have any black boxes on it? Okay.
No, it looks good.
Okay, good. So just let me know, Megan and team, when you want me to skip to the next slide.
All right, great. Thank you, Lauren. All right, so I'm just going to talk really quickly about what we already have at the two parks that we're talking about today. So Walnut Park, which is the smallest one that's on Walnut Ave and Walnut Park, basically has a playground structure for littler kids for sort of preschool age, also a larger structure for elementary school age kids, swings, a splash pad, and a bunch of benches and seating options. And it's a pretty small park, so this is sort of as much stuff as you can get in there. Slide. All right, and then Crawford Playground is quite a large park. There's a little league sized or softball sized field that can also work for soccer, a playground with sort of those, play structures for both of those age groups. And one of the kind of big things that we have been thinking about for this park is accessibility and slopes. So there's a lot of connecting paths. This park is a little bit of one of those city lots that is kind of in between a block in a way. So there's a lot of cut through paths and there's a lot of slopes that are greater than meet ADA. So this has been one of our big tasks for this park. Slide. All right. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but the site analysis stuff that I've showed so far is really what we talk about in the first community meeting. So we've already had the 2 community meetings and the 1 park pop-up meeting. So some of the feedback that we got from the first community meeting for Walnut was to keep all of the stuff. So all of the play structures, the swings and a splash pad, create a little more privacy from Walnut Street, and also to upgrade the site lighting. Slide. And then for Crawford, we had some of the same feedback around, having all of those play opportunities. Also, the idea of adding a splash pad, also upgrading the site lighting again. And one of the biggest ones was Crawford currently has these two spaces, right? The playground and the fields, and somehow getting those to feel connected. So maybe having a space in between in which you could see both things, the field and the playgrounds. And then some other things, increasing the size of the playground. The school uses the spaces, um, all of those kinds of things. Yes, thank you. So there you go.
The right one, right?
Yeah, yep, that's
All
the
right.
existing condition. All right. Shall we keep going? All right. Can we scoot forward to the, yeah,
Go.
okay, great.
They all went back.
Yep. Okay, so now I'm going to jump in to a little bit of a recap of the second community meeting. So at the second meeting, usually what we do is we take all of that feedback from the first one, the one where we look at what's there and we talk about what the community wants, and we put together a couple of design options for the parks. And so I'll start with Walnut, and these were two design options. So and usually at this phase, it's pretty schematic. We're sort of just looking at different places things can go, different, types of play structures. So as you can see on option A, we have all of the play equipment. Those are the wiggly, graphy looking things in one large area. And then an option, and then an option B, the play is actually laid out pretty close to how it currently is, with the splash pad, and close to the same place in both. And then option B also includes like a pergola for shade. So a few, that's kind of the big change in option B. Option A changes the entire playground layout. Slide. All right, and then I want to show you some of the feedback on those, because this is, of course, leading up to, kind of our more developed design that we're going to show you later tonight. So some of the feedback from those two options were keeping sort of an entry onto Walnut Park, keeping the two age groups, the play age groups, separate, keeping the splash pad feature flush instead of those like big wiggly ones. Like we had looked at those initially, but I think keeping them flush sprays that spray up allows us to use the space a little better. And also there was a preference for adding that kind of shade structure. Oh, and also a themed motif, which is something we can talk about later. Slide. And then we had this park pop-up the following week, which was just a couple of us, it was actually Jocelyn and Lauren, spending a few hours in the park, talking to people using the park. And this is just sort of additional feedback that we're trying to fold into our design. So what we got from that was sort of a preference for a taller play structure, a preference for that second plan with the two age groups separate, another request for a theme, sort of 50-50 on the spray, and a couple of other things. Bright colors are always great, keeping picnic tables, and possibly including the Ellis School students, which we have been working on trying to get a little design survey over to them. We're hoping to get feedback on that soon. So that was sort of all of the feedback we'd gotten on Walnut, that's meant to inform the designs we're going to show today. Okay, I'm going to move on to Crawford now. So same process for Crawford. This were the two sort of very schematic designs that we showed at the second meeting. A lot of challenges with Crawford because of the slopes and sort of because of the little skinny pinch points that you can see on this plan. So as you can see, the one on the left, keeps everything pretty close to where it is. The ball field is in the same location. The playground is in the same location on Crawford Street up against the fence. And the paths in from Crawford, Walnut, and Abbotsford are all basically in the same place because they can't really move. There isn't enough room. One thing that we would be improving in both options is the accessibility, eliminating stairs at any entrance and keeping slopes below 5%. So they're ADA compliant essentially, or installing ramps as needed, which would just be like a sloped walk with railings. So option A on the left, a little bit angular, keeping things basically where they were. Option B on the right moves the ball field a little bit to try to gain a little bit of the outfield. As you can see, there's a dashed line that's showing the outfield for a little league or softball sized field. And it's always this field is a little bit undersized. The outfield is a little bit small. So we're just trying to gain a little more space here. And then on this option, we're also moving the playground away from Crawford Street. So getting a little bit of a green buffer there and creating a plaza with a shade pergola in the middle. So that's really responding to those comments about being able to see both spaces. Slide. All right, and here is feedback from Crawford, the second community meeting. I'm try to go quickly because this is a recap, and it will all be up online as well. And most of this is already there in the previous meeting presentations online. So key feedback from the second community meeting for Crawford, creating accessible conditions at park entries, keeping that middle plaza overlook space, having play features that sort of work with the hills, because that's one of the challenges of the site is that there are a lot of hills. Moving the playground away from the Crawford Street line, including that splash pad, but keeping it near the playground. Increasing the size of the playground. This isn't explicitly in this note, but the playground at Crawford is pretty small. We know that the Ellis School students use it, and I think also possibly students from the Trotter School. So getting something that you can get at least the whole class into was a big goal. And then also adding adult exercise equipment. So we will be showing that. And then showing some sort of a circuit path that adults or anyone could walk a loop in the park. Slide. And then we did the same thing, the park pop-up on July 27th. Jessica from CBA and I went and hung out at Crawford for a while in the afternoon. It was lovely. And we got a little more feedback, things like creating clearer sight lines between the field and the playground. So that's basically talking about connecting those two spaces again, increasing the size of the playground, creating an open gathering space that can be used for programming, such as an area of flat lawn, which was another thing that we'd been looking at as designers. We never want to eat up all the lawn or all the trees. We want to keep things as green as possible. And then improving lighting, and then, using the paths for exercise. So a lot of feedback on Crawford. There we go. It's sort of a long recap of the 3 meetings we've had so far. So I am going to hand this over to Jocelyn Wolf from CBA, and she's going to talk us through the preferred design for Walnut.
Hi everyone, I'm Jocelyn, CBA. Megan said I'll be going over the preferred design for Walnut Park. Next slide. This design is based off of option B in the previous version that, like Megan said, had kind of some overarching ideas of realigning the park to Walnut Avenue and keeping everything where it is. So having separate areas for play for kids of different age groups. So we maintained the entrance at Walnut Avenue. We introduced an entrance at Walnut Park per the requests of our meetings with and park pop-ups. And one thing that Lauren and I noticed when we were at the park pop-up is that actually a lot of people use those benches at the intersection of Walnut Avenue and Walnut Park to sit as a transitory space and not necessarily go into the park. So in this option, we reintroduced the 2 benches so people can just still be in the park, but not necessarily within the fence limits of the playground. So we realigned the path along Walnut Avenue and maintained the 2 to 5-year-old structure where it was, and then the 5 to 12 structure and area where it is, so separated with a path, but then introduced some play features for kids to come together of various age groups to come together to play. So I think we have 2 distinct areas, but also places for kids to come together. So we have a 2 to 12 seesaw above the 2 to 5 play structure, an accessible spinner for ages 2 to 12, and then also for kids with any accessibility issues, and for multiple kids to play on, and then some spinners for 5 to 12-year-olds in the corner. And I'll show pictures of these all in the next slide and talk through them. And then above the structure, pretty much exactly where it is, but just redesigned a little bit, is a splash pad with some flush sprays, along with a seat wall that allows people to sit and either face within the splash pad or the swings. And then above the splash pad is the swings. We're introducing another bay. Currently there's 2 bays of swings, and we're introducing another one to have a dish swing on site that maintain the 2 to 5 swings, as well as the 5 to 12 and the adaptive swing seat. And then one thing I forgot to note is that between the splash pad and Walnut Avenue, we actually introduced some trees to provide a little bit more shade, but also create a little bit more privacy, because that was a concern brought up in the first meeting, is that people wanted a little bit more privacy for kids playing on the splash pad from the busy street. And then kind of where it is still is the picnic area, but we have some fire trucks. I hope that's, can anyone hear that? Yeah, okay, I think it's done. Okay, emergency over. But yeah, having a central seating area underneath the shade structure with some picnic tables, and then backless benches so people can either face within the gathering space or face outwards towards the play features. And then sprinkled throughout the site are some backed benches underneath some either existing shade trees or some proposed trees. And then one thing that this plan shows is kind of some flowers as a loose motif throughout of a theme that we could introduce to the site. It does not need to be flowers. It can be anything. We'd love to hear you guys' feedback on any themes that you think would be fun that we could integrate into the splash pad or the play areas. So yeah, when we open it up, we'd love to hear any ideas that you guys might have. Next. So these are the play features that we are proposing. Like Megan said, during our park pop-up, we had some kids request a large, tall feature with a slide. So instead of the 2 bars coming off, we're actually going to have a long slide there as well. So the kids will be able to get that tall feature with the slide that they requested. And then we have a 2 to 5 structure that has a similar feel and theme to it that can reflect on both, which also has some slides and some musical instruments on the bottom. And then next to those are the 2 types of spinners that we're proposing. One is kind of more individual, and then below is the larger one for kids of various ages to come together to play. And then in the top right corner is the seesaw. And then on the bottom is the dish swing that we're introducing to the site, along with the other existing swing set features that we are going to maintain. Next. Here's some furniture options, as well as an example of how we could integrate a theme to the spray pad. So this is an example of how we at a different park used the solar system as a theme, and so water is coming out of different planets. And so if anyone again has an option or suggestion for a theme, we'd love to hear it, how it can be integrated throughout the site. To the upper left is a shade structure. This one's a bright color. We actually have a lot of positive responses to using kind of bright furniture. So it doesn't necessarily need to be red, but introducing pops of colors to the furniture and potentially shade structure could be a fun way to create a dynamic space on the site. And then below are some contemporary furniture options that we could explore with either both backed and backless benches as well as picnic tables. Next. And then this last slide is just showing some features that are existing on site that we want to refurbish a little bit in this park redesign. We love the existing decorative steel fence that's on site. It's made from handprints from the David Ellis school children, I think from like 2 decades ago. So we want to maintain this kind of historic feature within the community, but just refurbish it and make it work with the new design. And then lastly, we haven't talked about, but there's this existing concrete wall behind the swings. And we would love to integrate some color to that as well, and potentially even administer that theme that we've been talking about and something onto that. So yeah, thank you so much. This is all my talking. We're gonna open it up for any comments or discussions. So, and then we'll move on to Crawford Playground.
So if anybody has any thoughts, please feel free to. Christine, does everybody have the ability to unmute themselves?
Yes, they do.
Oh, Mike's shaking his head no. Looks like he might not be able to.
Now
There we
they
go.
should know.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Christine. Thanks, Mike.
I'm not sure if anyone else wants to raise stuff. In any of the pop-ups for Walnut, did anybody raise any safety issues for you guys? I know there's safety issues in the past. I was curious to see if people raised any safety issues in your recent.
Oh, sorry. The safety issues that really were brought up to us, and team, feel free to jump in if I'm missing any. A lot of the ones that were brought up had to do with safety of crossing and getting to the playground. A lot of concerns about traffic, both for the Crawford and Walnut playgrounds. They talked a lot about, getting kids getting to the park safely. And really in terms of safety within the park, there were comments about concern with the water play being close to the street for visibility and wanting that to be farther away, but there wasn't anything more than that. Is there something else, Mike, in particular you're thinking of?
In the past, there was some drug activity around there.
Okay.
And then there's been some violence down the street and people kind of hanging out. So I would just be conscious about sight lines into the park where the police or anybody else or adults can kind of have a clear view in. I would try to make sure that there's no hidden places where people can kind of congregate, like at Trotter, there's different parks where people kind of create their own gathering spot to smoke, to do drugs and just to kind of hang out at night. Is there any lighting here? I mean, I know it's a younger park, so I'm sure that they don't want that much of a later crowd there, but I would just be aware that I know years ago, and I haven't been as recent, but I do know that there people were concerned about some safety issues that I would just be aware of.
No, that's great to know. Thank you, Mike.
In addition to the traffic issues that you're talking about. And
right.
Do you have gates so kids can't run across the sidewalk into the street and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, there are gates. And what we've talked about is, as you can see in this plan right now, the current crosswalk doesn't go towards the gate either. So some of the things that Parks has been talking to, and we started the conversations with BTD about trying to look at some of the crosswalks, making safer connections both here and at Crawford. We don't have any final details on that yet, but it is a conversation that we've started. But yes, there definitely are gates on all 3 of those playground entrances. I have to say, I'm curious if anybody wants to jump in on theming, because I know that right now the playground has those lovely handprints, but I'm not necessarily sure that that's a theme unto itself, right? In terms of patterns and the rubber surfacing, we could do a bunch of handprints, right, to kind of connect those things. I'm just wondering if there's something. I know that the team has the flowers on here. There's those handprints. Is there anything else that anyone thinks of that kind of feels like the neighborhood, that feels
Well-
it's appropriate for Walnut.
What I like about the handprints is that it's a connection from the past.
Mhm.
And then if you can kind of figure out a way to include the Ellis students, or I'm not sure if there's a daycare, a family daycare or a group center around there, where you could do something similar, where you can do handprints or whatever drawings or whatever, and then figure out a way to incorporate that in. So when the children come by, they say, "Oh, there's my handprint," or so they feel a little bit of ownership into that.
Mhm. And we have Mike, I had a really good exchange last year with folks at the Ellis School about involving the students and the staff. We put together surveys and sent them over, and the people that I had talked to were so excited about us collaborating with them. And then no one responded to any of our surveys. So I sent it again this year, and we still haven't heard back. So unfortunately, I'm trying to get that connection going. So hopefully over the next coming weeks, maybe now that they're more established and getting back to that routine, we can get there. But we have been trying to work with them throughout this process. So hopefully as we get a little further in this, we can get them really involved. Any other thoughts on any of the play equipment or sort of how we've set this up? I know a lot of folks were really excited about the idea of sort of separating those age groups, which is one of the reasons that this was favored a lot over that first scheme, because the older kids and the younger kids were a little bit separated by that pathway. But before we go on to Crawford, I just wasn't sure if there were any other thoughts or questions on this design.
So I see there's a comment in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
About some of these play structures looking a lot like the ones at Marcella. So you know what? I will go check that, because I have not been to Marcella lately. Yeah, because we don't want to put in something similar to a nearby park. We want this to be a different experience.
Yes, thank you, Samantha, for bringing that up. I'll be honest, I haven't been to that one either. That one wasn't one of mine. So.
And you also had some equipment for children that have different abilities, right? If I saw that right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Do you want me to
Yeah.
did you want me to show any, Megan?
Oh, I can jump in.
Okay. Is
So
this the right slide? Do you want me to show?
yeah, this is a great slide. So that that green spinner that I always feel kind of looks like a turtle is a great kind of for kids that have different mobility or different body control. That's a great thing to kind of use collaboratively with other kids or with a caregiver, because you can sit in that and be spun and enjoy it. The dish swing is also a really good one, in that same way that it can be like a group of kids working together. And we are also, I think every park we do now that has swings always has an adaptive swing, for kids that need that support in the swing.
In
And we
addition, oh, sorry, Megan.
no, go on.
In addition to the dish swing being great for collaborative and a lot of kids getting to play together, it's also really good for kids on the autism spectrum, because it sort of feels like a little nest in an enclosure. So it's also really great for that realm as well. So it actually kind of hits two different really important criteria.
Thank you for doing that. And then on your water structure, have you guys been able to kind of tighten up the security of your water box? Because I know the one on Intervale kept on getting vandalized and all that stuff. So have you been able to figure out how to deal with that, and also pay attention to the water runoff and all those fun issues?
Yeah, absolutely. And Intervale, so Intervale in terms of the runoff is as you know, Mike, is a very different place with the grade change. And luckily with Walnut, it's much flatter. So in terms of the runoff, it's much easier to control. And in terms of the cabinet itself, we've been speccing different kinds of boxes with different locks on them.
Great job, you guys.
Thank you. I'm gonna jump to Crawford, but as a reminder, when we finish everything, we can go back and talk more about Walnut if you guys think about something as we're talking through Crawford too. Oh,
those
Mike, yeah, do you want me to go back?
those benches that you just flashed through,
Yes.
do they experience any issues where people at night are camping out on those benches? Or do you have to do little mid-sized mounts to kind of discourage people from sleeping or anything like that?
That's a
I don't want to be
great
accused
question,
of
Mike.
being anti squatting, but it does kind of create issues.
Yeah, and it's hard because we can't always get precedent images of exactly what we'd be putting in. But also, Mike, I shouldn't say we do tend to, most of the time we put in those central arm rests. And interestingly, even though it has the effect of what you're talking about in terms of squatting, the main reason we actually put those on is for older residents, because being able to have two armrests to push down on is much better. And it's something that Age Strong Boston has requested for us to do, is to put those in so that it's a lot easier for people with lesser mobility or people who are a little bit older as well.
Okay, got it.
It's a great question, Mike. Is this the right slide? Did I go too far?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Choi from CBA Landscape Architects, and I'm going to go through the preferred schematic plan for Crawford Street Playground. So this plan was based mostly on the ideas shown in option B, and obviously further tweaked from comments that we've received from all the previous public meetings. So as shown in the option B plan, this design is mostly driven by this idea and a community desire to connect both sides of the park, so the upper field and the lower playground area. So we really tried to focus on developing that central in-between space, further defining it into like a plaza area where people can gather, watch the sports games, and have a view down to the playground at the same time. And as you can see in the plan, it's all these paths, all these new paths converge at this point and kind of branch out, including this connection back to the school. So it really does kind of become an important node or like a destination point. We're also showing some type of pergola or a shade structure that would kind of anchor that space and serve as like a landmark for people to see from afar and be able to understand that, you know, that's kind of the point that they want to get to, and just sort of like a transition between the lower and the upper levels of the site. And to further reinforce the connection from either side, as Megan mentioned earlier, we looked at pooling those major spaces. So the ball field and the playground kind of more inward, so that those major programmatic spaces are kind of more aligned with each other and kind of feel more connected. The other goal was, as mentioned earlier, was trying to make the entire park as accessible as possible. And obviously that was pretty challenging with the topography and all the grade changes across the site. But basically at every entry, it should be fully accessible now. So at the Walnut Street entrance, we've removed those steps, and you can now enter along a sloped walkway. The same thing from the Abbotsford Street entry. From the lower Crawford Street side, a series of ramps takes you up into the field. And then moving up towards the main Crawford Street entry into the playground, because this part of the site is more hilly and there's more topography to work with, we did have to resort to steps along one route. But there is another accessible route. Basically, as you enter from the Crawford Street side, you can, as the cursor is showing, you can take a swing to the right and kind of follow that loop path around the play area. And that loop path was also in response to one of the requests to have some kind of circuit path in the park. And we did try to look at fitting that on the ball field side, but as Megan mentioned earlier, because that part of the site is undersized for a full outfield, we wanted to be able to maximize the field size and just looked on the playground side to try to fit more of that loop path experience. So I guess I'll go through some of the new features on the sports field side. So on either side of the ball field, we've added some team benches with some type of shelter or shade structure over them, additional benches on either side of the field for spectators to sit. along that main path that kind of runs north-south between the plaza, that upper plaza and towards Abbotsford Street. We've also added like an exercise station that groups together some individual exercise elements. And then further down where those three paths kind of converge at that big existing shade tree, we saw that as an opportunity to add another plaza space for like game tables or cafe tables, just kind of for some more informal gathering, and in response to an earlier comment about how the neighbors love using this park to just hang out and play games and stuff. And so on the playground side, I guess on the next slide, we're showing an enlargement of this area, just since there's more detail that we wanted to show. But again, basically the playground has shifted more inward, is kind of more nestled into the hillside. And that sloped lawn area, basically it kind of essentially transitions into the playground, and a part of that hill becomes very much part of the play experience. So sort of like along the northern part of the play area, it's pretty much bordered by this little hillside that the kids can kind of run up and down along, and it also kind of creates sort of like a bowl or a nest-like feel to the playground space. So as you can see, there's 3 entry points into the playground. There's the direct access from Crawford Street, where you can take those stairs up into the play space, or you can turn right and take an accessible route towards that other landing, which is also a new entry point that we've made from the museum side, or you can keep going up and along the path that slopes a little further more, and be able to enter from basically the upper part of the playground. And within the playground, we've expanded it even further to be able to fit these 3 main structures, including a double dish swing, a structure for older kids ages 5 to 12, and a separate structure for younger kids ages 2 to 5. And kind of sprinkled throughout, we can look at incorporating some more episodic elements like musical instruments. And again, along the hillside, we can incorporate some things like rubber spheres or climbers that can kind of further enhance that hillside experience. And then we've also looked at incorporating a splash pad area, which isn't inside the playground, but next to it, so that there's easy access between the 2 spaces. And so that's kind of located right near the upper level of the play area. And obviously when that's not in use, it can also function as additional plaza space. Next slide. And to further illustrate and to kind of help you visualize how these spaces are kind of sequenced together across the topography of the site, we're going to share a section drawing. So basically, if you just imagine kind of cutting through the site and looking straight ahead, this is kind of the view that you get. So it is about like a 15-foot grade change between the Crawford Street side and to the upper field area. So quite a lot of hill to deal with, but we've tried to utilize the hill to kind of help us organize the spaces across the site. And so starting from the upper left-hand side, you have the Little League and softball field, transitioning to the Overlook Plaza area that connects the 2 sides of the park. That little path that looks like it's going up, that's the path that connects you back to the school. And then from there, the space transitions into that open lawn space that rolls further down into the playground, which you see at the bottom section below. And this hopefully communicates how much we've expanded the play area, and also just how it's kind of nestled in or built into that hillside. And so that colored yellow area represents the rubber sort of having that raised edge. So it does have kind of an upper and lower level to the play space. And then finally, as you approach the Crawford Street side, that open lawn space where the playground originally was along that side, it now becomes kind of like a nice green buffer space between the Crawford Street and the new playground area. Next slide. So these are just some precedent images of the play structures to give you a sense of what they could look like. Currently, we're showing for the structure for older kids at the top, basically something much bigger and containing lots of different kinds of play elements and components, and with lots of room for students from the Ellis School to be able to spread out across the playground and be able to climb up as well. So this includes some type of like tower element to be able to give that vertical experience for those kids. And also within the same image are some musical instruments that we can look at incorporating as well. The lower left image is what we're showing currently for the younger kids. So something kind of fun and geometric, and the colors here obviously are not set in stone. We can obviously change that. It's just more to kind of give you a sense of what the play experiences could look and feel like. And finally, that image on the lower right-hand corner is to help you see how the topography itself can become a play element, just something that the kids can run up and down on. And we can also add some more episodic features like those rubber spheres or domes that could be really fun to balance on or climb on. Next slide. So these are just the athletic features that we're maintaining, including the softball field / Little League field. Obviously that can continue to be used for other sports like soccer, and the bottom images are some of the fitness equipment pieces that we're showing in that one little exercise cluster. Next. For furnishings, again, we're showing some type of pergola at that upper central plaza area. We probably won't be having any kind of those movable seating that you see under the pergola, but hopefully this gives you a sense of like the scale and the size of the structure. What would be more likely is the cafe seating that you see on the lower right-hand corner. That would probably be installed underneath the pergola or at some of those other plaza spaces. And we'll also be looking at some bench seating. And again, with the topography, there will be a lot of retaining walls or sections of retaining wall that will need to be used throughout the site. And so we'll also try to look at opportunities where those walls could also become like a sitting element or a sitting wall. Next slide. And one final piece of furniture element that we are hoping to include are some new team benches with some type of shelter over them. And these bottom images it's not something that we've showed explicitly on our drawings, but something that we want to make sure that you all know that we're continuing to think about these elements as something that we'd like to incorporate as we get more into the or further develop these plans. Such as some of these like wayfinding or entry markers, like the entry arch or this kind of like decorative metal column that can kind of help mark the paths or each of the various entries throughout the site. Just something that can help keep the circulation as clear as possible, since we're really trying to improve the pathway system for Crawford Street Playground. And also there's a lot of like history and neighborhood history that people brought up would be fun to kind of be an educational opportunity for all the park users. So something like an interpretive signage element that's shown on the lower left-hand corner is another thing that we'd like to think about moving forward. So I think that's it.
So again, everybody, I think you guys have the ability to unmute yourselves. Let us know if you guys have any thoughts on this one as well. I know it's a lot to take in between the two parks.
Well, I like the effort. Were you able to expand much the Little League and softball field? Are we getting closer, or is it still short?
It's still short because of the streets. It's unfortunately always been small and there's no way to get it to regulation size. Um, if there was, we would do it, but it's also one of the reasons, like Jessica was saying, with the request for the walking loop, we put that around the playground because we didn't want anybody, especially with it being a short field, not only taking field space away, but for safety. But yeah, it's probably one of the tightest fields we have.
And did you get much have you been able to get any feedback from the Ellis? Because don't they use the field or?
They do, yeah, they use the park quite a bit. I've talked to several of the staff members there, but we haven't been able to get any of the feedback from the students yet. But they are very excited. They've definitely talked about how they use they use the field quite a bit. They do use the playground a lot. And they did talk about how it's definitely undersized for the groups that they have out there. So the ability to really expand the playground, not just square footage wise, but also the size of the equipment and being able to get more kids on the equipment at one time was a huge thing they were really excited about.
That's great. Oh, sorry.
Go
Oh,
ahead,
no,
Samantha.
feel free. Yeah.
I know. I think it looks awesome and really excited to see it. I just had a couple questions. And one was about like access to and from the Ellis and from the parking lot. I'm just trying to envision like what that, and I know just people can kind of come quickly through that area. It looks like there's a pretty big barrier between the play space and the parking lot, but I'm curious what that will actually look like as when you're in the playground. Will there be a fence, or is it just like the topography is such that it's not even
So
accessible?
so the playground, that it's not quite a bean shape anymore, but the whole playground area does have a fence on it, which would be like
Okay.
a
Oh, I see.
typical,
Okay.
yeah,
On that inside of this sidewalk goes around the outside. So
Okay.
yeah, the fence is there.
right.
Got it.
Yeah, and then there would be sort of that little path connecting to the parking, the museum parking. Yep, right there.
Yep.
Thank you for the hand. And there is an existing access point
And
to the
there.
school right there, and we are
Yep.
just meeting it at the level it's at. It's a
Gotcha.
challenging little hill.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really helpful. And I really like that you added the loop and like a really creative way to do it. I'm wondering if there's a way, again, tying into just the exercise component, like do you know how long the loop is, or a way to like mark that and just like have a note somewhere to let people know if they're walking around, X number of times.
That's a
Absolutely.
great
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. That could even tie into just like there could be a sign, but there could also be some graphics on the actual pathway itself. And the other thing, and sorry, Jessica, if I'm repeating and I just missed you guys saying it, and also correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of the topography, this orange path around the outside, because it's hilly, this is inside, and this is also another loop that is ADA accessible. So there's this loop here that's paved, but then there's also this inner loop, which is the same rubber surfacing as the playground. So there's almost two loops, depending on what you're using them for.
Gotcha. And it looked even like a larger loop too, although there's stairs there. It looks
exactly.
Like.
So I mean, if you, from like a circuit perspective, if you're exercising, yes, you could absolutely do a larger loop and put some stairs into that routine. But from an ADA perspective or from a trike loop perspective, this is where that would be.
Got it. And I love that there's still like the open green space too. Got it.
That was definitely something we heard at the other meetings, is that they wanted to expand the playground, but not lose the lawn space. Even though I know we've got the field, it's just a different feel over there.
Definitely. No, it looks great. Really exciting. Thank you.
The other question that I have for the design team, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this before, but in terms of what Mike was talking about earlier in terms of accessibility, one of the things I always love about slopes is that sometimes when there are pieces of equipment that have upper levels, sometimes you can actually get wheelchairs out onto levels with a ramp or something from an upper level. Is this the type of equipment that can happen on, or is it not because it's the rope climbers?
So we are actually working with the structure designer on whether that can work here.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any?
I
Oh,
thought the iPhone gentleman had something to say. Did you have something to say?
oh, you're muted, sir.
How about now?
Yeah, there we go.
Hi, I'm a member of the Roberto Clemente League, and we've been using the park for a long time. I want to say thank you for what you guys are doing. Great job. It looks so far so good. I'm just wondering, is this the last time you guys are going to meet, or is it going to be another meeting prior to the construction?
Yeah, so this is our third community meeting. We've had 2 already. So this is our last meeting, but we will be sending out an email update once all the designs are finalized and the schedule is confirmed as well.
Okay, the only other thing I know that is difficult to incorporate the bathroom situation, because now there's going to be more accessibility, there's going to be more people, more games. Has anybody thought about an area to put porta potties, or is there going to be something else you guys are going to think about?
Yeah, so you're right. In terms of restrooms, it's not something that we could put permanent ones in, but I do know a lot of leagues bring them in. Is that something that you guys have done here in the past?
Yes, every time we have like opening day ceremony or the award
Okay.
ceremony, sometimes we need to bring them in. We just want to make sure there's a place where the truck can, you know.
Yeah,
bring it
no,
in.
that's great, because that hadn't been brought up before in terms of the league use of porta potties. And usually we also like to make sure that in addition to access, like you were talking about, for getting them there, we also like to make sure there's a place that's easy for them to be put as well. So I appreciate that. We'll make sure that we look into that.
Thank you so much.
Oh, could I just ask, when you do get porta potties, where do you put them?
They usually come in through the side the same way that the Park and Recreation brings it in, and we put it on the left-hand side. As soon as you come up that driveway, to the left, there's a little cement area there before you get to the grassy area. And that's usually where it goes.
So wait, do they come in off of Walnut or off of Crawford?
They come in through Crawford next to the museum, and then
Okay, so they
that
come up
ramp.
through here.
Okay.
And
Okay.
as soon as you get through the fence that we have, they're blocking, supposedly blocking cars.
Mhm.
On the left of that is where they usually put it.
Okay. So it's down closer to the parking lot, not farther up by the field.
It's at the top of the hill.
Oh, to
Going
the
in.
top of
It's
the,
up.
okay.
So
Sort of
okay.
up where we're talking about the plaza now.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. That's good to know.
Other than that, so far so good.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm really glad that you were here to let us know about that.
It's a great park. We use it a lot. We have issues sometimes trying to get the grass cut because the problem we have sometimes you get a permit from April to October. But if we're playing out of town, they say that we're not using the park. Now we can't be in 2 places at the same time. If we're playing out of
Right.
town, doesn't mean that we're not going to come back to use our field, and they should maintain it whether we're here or not. It should be on a schedule.
Right,
And
right.
if we have issues sometimes not getting lines or grass growing in the infield, and hopefully this will, help that situation.
And is
That's
the
my hope
fence,
too.
is the fence high enough for you guys? Do they need to strengthen the fence for the field, for your outfield fence or the foul line fence?
Yes, they did. They did a good job, and then they raised it a little because sometimes we had issues with breaking people's windows, so they made the fence a lot taller. We take care of that situation. So they've been trying to work with us. Just sometimes they forget the park is being used.
So, so the fence that's out there, the height works well now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's great. Okay. Fantastic. And especially since we've got you here. Where did I? Okay, so players benches, covered players benches, it's a good thing. Yes.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. Especially we just know, especially with climate change and heat island, we're trying to make sure that with players that we're trying to provide opportunities for people to cool off as well.
Yes, ma'am. And now that there's going to be water, it's going to make a world of difference.
That's great. Okay, good.
I have a few other questions.
Of course.
Is there any way that you guys can help repair that driveway that he referenced about that's in such bad repair that it's but I mean I always knew that parks kind of use it. I know the school uses it. Are you able to swing any funds to help repave that, or at least help do some work on it?
I've asked that question, and the answer I was given is no, because it's not on our property, but I am continuing to try to push that.
So
But the
I
answer I've
think I
gotten
would
so
just,
far is no.
because as our gentleman referenced it, that's how people bring stuff into the park.
And
So,
Parks uses it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Parks uses it, school department uses it. I mean, you know, seems like we could do something so it isn't such a safety hazard or whatever. So,
Right.
I mean, I will keep on adding, raising that every time I can get.
No, that's great. And I appreciate you trying to keep everybody honest on it.
Well, we brought it up, but the thing like it's like museum says it's not ours, and the park is like this. Well, it's not ours, and the school says, well, we don't really we have nothing to do with that. So everybody's a big circle going around about who's not in charge of that parking lot, or at least that driveway.
But
Right.
everybody uses it.
Right,
everybody-
exactly, but everybody uses it. I will keep trying to push, and I hopefully will have an answer when we have a finalized design to send out to everybody, Mike.
And we'll work on our elected officials to kind of encourage them to weigh in on this as well.
I
And,
like that. That definitely helps. It truly does, to kind of have it coming from multiple angles. It's a good thing.
And then is there enough separation from that driveway? Because I know it's active from that driveway, from the schoolyard. I think you talked about that there is some fence and whatever separating
Here.
access. So you feel pretty confident about that?
Yeah, I think because we have a fully enclosed playground, you don't have the kids running out, and then obviously the wall and everything that's still along this edge, you know, that'll stay. So I feel really confident about that.
And then I'm not sure from the baseball league perspective, but I know there's been needles found in the past around here. And I know I found needles at other parks. Has there been any issues of needles lately? Any issues of people squatting overnight?
Well, we still do the parent walk, which everybody goes shoulder to shoulder. We walk the field back and forth. And believe it or not, this year we haven't found not one needle in that park.
Wow,
Good.
that's great.
Been really good. Now we have the people that come by, you know, read a book and smoke a joint. And as soon as they see us pull up, they leave. I don't have an issue with that because, you know, what are you going to do? You can't put a guard there to watch people do what they do.
Right.
But as soon as they see us, they're fine. They walk away. We never had any issues, and we go back to doing what we do.
Good.
Okay.
The other thing you might think about for your historical plaque, I would try to tie it into the museum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not sure whether you can rotate it or whether it's fixed or something like that, or just make the connection. So maybe then we can kind of get everybody and the school, maybe, you know, we can figure out we can finally get people to take some responsibility for our driveway that nobody wants to take care of. But if we can kind of tie it in with the rich history of the museum.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was part of a lot of the comments that we had at the beginning when it was first brought up about that interpretive signage, was a lot about the museum and the building and the entire estate that had been there. So that ties right in with a lot that we've heard already too, Mike.
I only have one more question. How long from the shovel going in the dirt until it's cutting the ribbon time?
That's a good question, and a much harder question this year to answer than I've ever had to answer before. So traditionally and because we're doing two of them at the same time, because we're doing this and Walnut at the same time, I would traditionally say it's between 6 and 9 months. Unfortunately, this year, as with, you know, you see it a lot, you know, even in the auto industry with the chips, with a lot of things, manufacturing is really hitting our projects hard, both with PVC pipes for drainage, for even the glue, the binder on the rubber surfacing in the playgrounds. We can't get it for 6 to 12 months right now. So right now we're seeing a lot of unprecedented delays due to fabrication and manufacturing issues. So traditionally, I would say 6 to 9 months. One of the things that I'm going to try to push on every project that's starting construction next year is to try to get things in hand before we put the shovel in the ground, so that we have to keep the site closed as short of a time as possible. but we also are running into things that we've never seen before in terms of delays. So that's not a great answer, but it's probably the best I can give you this far out. But hopefully once we're a little bit closer, we'll know a bit more whether, the fabrication is catching up with construction.
Just trying to
Is
see
there
if
gonna be any
we
impact on the field?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Is there going to be any impact on the field, their access to the field for their season or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, when the park is closed for construction, we'll work with the permitting department, so they'll know when things will be closed. And what traditionally happens is, especially, leagues or anybody that's looking for permits, but especially leagues who've traditionally played at any park that's closed for construction, the permitting department works with them on relocating them during the construction season to other nearby fields. So. And I'm assuming that you've worked with Paul McCaffrey with permitting and that sort of thing.
Yes.
With the league. Yeah. So he'll be able to, once we know a bit more, he won't have any dates yet because we don't necessarily know when it's going out to construction yet. But as we get closer, he'll be filled in on everything. So he'll be able to help you guys when it is shut down.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, I had a question about the vegetation, and I was wondering because there was an interest for Walnut Park for bright colors, and I was just wondering if for the trees or even like the plants, if you guys had any specific ones in mind, because I think it'd be a cool idea to incorporate that. You can still have that bright colors kind of happening with the vegetation surrounding there, and especially if they're picked out where there's different colors like throughout the seasons, like some would be orange here and some would be pink there. And so it's seasonally, it's always happening in something new, and that could really engage the people there.
Want me to
No,
jump in?
I was actually just gonna say, Megan, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah. So that's a great comment and I love it. So generally we try to specify, and I'll start by saying that for both of these parks, probably what we're specifying is trees more than like shrubs and perennials. I know that the Boston Parks Department has very limited maintenance staff for managing gardens. And a lot of times we tend to focus our tree plantings on things that are native, things that are low care, and are very like water efficient, things that are great that allow the trees to do well in difficult urban environments, which unfortunately a lot of our parks are. Think about all those kids running over all those groups, and after a while it can have an impact. But that said, we can specify some of these as flowering trees. There's like a lot of nice ones that have pinks and whites and yellows in the spring. There's some other things that do great, like whites and yellows in the summer, so we can look at that. Why not? That would be a treat.
Yeah, and I think, looking at this, even in the plan, we're proposing several understory flowering trees here. And also with the other shade trees that are going in, like you were talking about, things that have pops of color at different times of year in terms of what the fall colors are. And the other thing that Megan's exactly right, and it's hard to tell the community that we can't maintain, ornamental flowering things, but what we can do is things like bulbs. So putting, daffodils in, things that, in some of the planting areas, like, possibly like under a couple of the trees, not obviously looking like Holland, but we can, with bits and pieces, add those pops of colors through the vegetation too.
And
Yeah.
there is there's
Yeah.
also that city bulb planting program, right? That
They're actually signing up for right now, where the Parks Department, and actually Christine may be a better person to talk about it, but the Parks Department donates bulbs to groups or organizations that want to plant them in public spaces throughout the city. It's going on right now, and you can request them through.
I'm gonna put in the website in the chat.
Perfect. That's great. So I know that like my kids go to a BPS school, and our school has gotten them in the past where we have then, as like a parent group, planted them on the school property. And so it's a really great opportunity that Parks does every year.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of this program. Thanks. Thank you for
Yeah.
letting me know.
That's great.
One more question. Has anyone mentioned anything about a location for dogs? The only issue we have a lot is people use that area for running their dogs, getting them off leash. And not all the time are they picking up what they're leaving behind.
Right.
Is there an area for the dogs, or is there going to be more signage letting them know to take it with them?
Yeah, so that has come up, and one of the things that we talked about, and it came up especially at Crawford, and not necessarily at Walnut, but part of what we do, and because a lot of times, in addition to the lawn areas, people will let dogs loose in a fenced playground because it's fenced, and then they don't have to run after them. So there's not going to be a designated dog area, but as part of our renovations, we always do put more signage in terms of keeping dogs on leashes, no dogs in the playground, and we put up signage as to why in terms of safety reasons, and also signage about cleaning up after dogs. One of the other things that we have talked about here is the potential of adding a dog waste bag dispenser. And part of, again, and it comes back to being able to refill it. Parks can't refill it and be there to check it every time, but if there are groups or organizations that are willing to refill it for us, we can drop off boxes of bags so that as it empties, people can refill it. Sometimes neighbors are happy to do that. So that's something that we could look at here as well. That might help with that. Yes. As I'm sure you can imagine, it's an issue in almost every one of our parks, and it's really hard to change behaviors when people don't clean up when they should.
Yeah, one of the worst scenes, picking up a ball and finding that it's not the ball.
Oh, believe me, I know. I was at a playground once when my child was 4, and he walked over with a handful of it that he had picked up and was like, "Mommy, what's this?" And I was like, "Oh, geez." So believe me, I completely understand. Yeah, we went straight home. Yeah. So, well, I do want to respect everybody's time. I know we've got scheduled for another 10 minutes. I don't know if there's anything else that anybody else wants to talk through about any of these, or has any other thoughts while we're all together.
You have a couple of new people, Linda and somebody else who joined, and you might want to see if they have any feedback.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Mike, for pointing that out. I've got the presentation up, so I don't see everybody joining in. Does anybody else that joined in have any thoughts or questions that we could pop back to any of our slides?
I have to apologize. It came in rather late.
That's okay. That's why we're here tonight, to get feedback. That's okay.
So far everything seems okay, but the reason why you're having issues with the dogs it's also kind of on the isolated side. Even though it's not isolated for the neighborhood and they're aware of it, it is isolated from the main drag is what it comes down to.
Okay. Just in terms of people not necessarily seeing in and seeing what the activities are happening?
Correct. And I also heard that it would be helpful to like notate the museum with the playground and the area, the historical portion of it.
Exactly. Yeah, that was something. Let's see if I can flip to it really quickly. I think it's this direction. One of the things we had heard, and we were thinking about some signage similar to this, some things you see in like the national parks that has a lot of interpretive information on it. So we were thinking exactly about that with the museum and the estate.
Okay. Over time, because of, I call it sun bleaching, will it get replaced?
So yes, over time is the answer. But also to answer the question, a lot of those signs have had issues in the past. And I will say my husband actually is a environmental graphic designer that does signage and wayfinding, so I know way more about signs than I ever wanted to. But the materials and the products that they've been developing recently have a much longer lifespan as well. So yes, eventually they would need to be replaced. But in terms of a lot of the weathering that you see on a lot of signs that are out there, the fabrication methods have actually, in the last 5 years, changed significantly.
Okay,
For a lot less UV wear on them. And they have a lot of UV protectants on them now.
all right.
Sorry, I'm just writing notes down too. So are there, Chevanice, I see that you joined as well. Do you have any thoughts? Do you want me to flip to the field? I know that you're excited about the fields as well as the other parts of the park.
Thank you for acknowledging me. I apologize. I have my one vote, so I apologize again.
No, not a
I'm
problem.
just going to see the final design, so no real input, just joining in just to see what the final plans came about.
That's great. And Chevanice, I'm just curious, we were talking earlier in terms of the field use. Do you guys bring in porta potties as well?
Not to Crawford Street, just simply because we haven't used Crawford Street as much due to the lighting. I think that's just been the issue for everyone in terms of long-term use. I think baseball pretty much again is, on and off. From what I can see, no one brings in porta potties to Crawford Street. But again, like I said, it's just probably been due to lack of lighting. So a lot of it's day games, quick or after school use.
Okay. I know that one of the gentlemen on the call was saying that the Roberto Clemente League brings them in sometimes here. So that's why I wasn't sure if you guys did as well. So that's good to know that just in terms of I was going to ask how you guys used it, if you guys also brought them in.
I mean, for any field, if we have to, because again, we deal with kids, we obviously bring the porta potty, but because we do night pretty much after school, Crawford Street hasn't always been of use to us just due to the lighting issue, especially in the fall. We've been able to utilize it in the spring. And like I said, again, we brought it, but we'll also try to make kind of arrangements with the school if it's open and things of that nature. So
that makes sense. Well, are there any other slides anybody wants me to jump back to, or any other thoughts that people have? So then I may go ahead and say thank you to everybody. And if you think of anything, please feel free. We'll be posting this online and looking for feedback from everybody as well. So we will be continuing to collect feedback. Again, I put my email address in there. So please, if any of your friends or neighbors couldn't join us tonight, please make sure to let them know that we're taking comments. They can reach out to me. And like I said, both the presentation as a PDF, but also the video of the meeting tonight will also be online. So anybody who missed it can take a look there as well. So thank you all again, really appreciate it. Oh, Linda, great comment on the accessible picnic table. And yes, accessible site furnishings are definitely something that we're always looking to make sure we install.
I'm saying good night and thank you. You guys did a great presentation. It was wonderful. And we'll stay in touch. Have a good night, everyone.
Sounds great. Thank you all.
Thank you.